Most people think change comes from learning something new. A new habit, a new mindset, a new version of themselves. But real change usually comes from something quieter. It comes from finally noticing what's been happening inside you all along. There is a small psychological shift that, once you see it, rearranges everything. How you relate to effort, how you experience control, how you understand growth. It isn't a trick, it isn't a mantra, and it doesn't require you to fix yourself. It's a different way of seeing. Most people live as if life is happening to them, as if peace will arrive once circumstances improve, once people behave differently, once problems disappear. But here's the unsettling truth. Your life doesn't respond to events. It responds to your attention. You don't experience the world as it is. You experience it as your nervous system expects it to be. That's why two people can live the same moment and walk away with completely different realities. The strategy that changes everything is simple, but not easy. It's learning to watch instead of react, to observe your thoughts, emotions, and impulses without immediately turning them into a story about who you are. Every thought that appears, every emotion that rises, every reaction that tightens your body, they aren't enemies, they're messages. But most of us were never taught how to listen. We were taught to silence them, to fix them, to replace them as fast as possible. The mind thinks it's protecting you by rushing to label everything. Good, bad, right, wrong, my fault, their fault. But transformation begins at the exact moment you notice, without rushing to conclude. You don't have to answer every thought that knocks on your door. You can let it speak, and still remain still. This is what psychologists call meta-awareness, but in everyday language, it's much simpler. It's waking up inside the moment before you react. It's realizing that the voice in your head isn't reality. It's your nervous system translating what feels unsafe into what sounds true. Someone doesn't reply to your message. A voice says, "I'm not important." Someone pulls away. Another voice says, "I'm easy to forget." But if you pause, even for 2 seconds, and notice that voice as a voice, not as truth, something shifts. Everything softens. Because what you're practicing in that moment isn't control. It's choice. The space between stimulus and response is the birthplace of our freedom. Each time you stay there, just watching you slowly rewrite your conditioning. Most people believe healing means feeling better. But healing actually begins when you allow yourself to feel without turning the feeling into a verdict. Anxiety doesn't mean something is wrong with you. Anger doesn't mean you're broken. Sadness doesn't mean you're weak. They are old signals, still moving. When you stop fighting them, you teach your body something new. That safety doesn't come from avoiding pain. Safety grows from presence. Think about how much energy you spend managing impressions, editing your words, bracing for rejection, rehearsing moments that haven't happened yet. All of that effort is built on one hidden belief: that how others see you is more real than how you experience yourself. That belief is the root of most suffering. But when you begin watching your reactions instead of obeying them, you start to notice how automatic this performance has become. You realize your personality isn't fully who you are. It's partly a collection of defenses, ways you learn to belong without being seen. Every time you notice yourself shrinking, or performing, or abandoning your truth to keep the peace, you are standing at the edge between your old life and your real one. That moment right there is where freedom begins. Not when you change your habits, not when you finally love yourself, but when you simply see what you're doing without shame. Because awareness alone is transformation in its earliest form. It doesn't force change. It dissolves patterns through understanding. When you truly see a pattern, you no longer need to fight it. It starts losing its grip. Most people spend their lives trying to become better. But the strategy that changes your life forever is simpler than that. Become conscious of what's already happening inside you. Watch the thoughts that pull you, the emotions that color your day, the stories that justify your pain. And in that watching, a quiet realization begins to form. You were never broken. You were only hypnotized by old meanings. And this awareness, this simple noticing, is only the beginning. Part 2. When awareness reaches the body. As awareness deepens, something important becomes clear. Watching your thoughts is powerful, but it isn't enough. Because most reactions don't start in the mind, they start in the body. A tight chest, a sinking stomach, a clenched jaw. Before a single thought appears, the body has already decided whether the moment feels safe. That's why you can understand something logically and still feel overwhelmed emotionally. When you're triggered, it's rarely about what's happening now. It's about the echo of something that once did. Someone raises their voice and your body tightens. Not because they're dangerous, but because long ago, loud meant unsafe. Someone goes quiet and your stomach drops. Not because they're rejecting you, but because silence once meant abandonment. These reactions aren't flaws. They're memories without words. The nervous system doesn't speak in language. It speaks in sensation. And this is where awareness becomes healing. Not by analyzing, not by fixing, but by staying. When a reaction arises and you don't escape it, don't suppress it, don't explain it away, you teach your body something new. That this moment is survivable, that you don't need to run, that safety can exist inside discomfort. This is how emotional memory gets rewritten. The body doesn't change through insight alone. It changes through consistent presence. Each time you remain with a feeling you once avoided, you show your system what safety feels like now. And slowly, without force, old reflexes begin to soften. You'll notice it in small ways. The same situation that once pulled you into defense now invites curiosity. Instead of, "What's wrong with me?" you begin asking, "What is this moment showing me?" That shift from judgment to curiosity changes the chemistry of your inner world. Curiosity is the gentlest form of courage. It doesn't demand answers. It only asks you to turn toward what you've been avoiding. And when you do, pain starts to reveal its message. Anger shows you where you abandoned yourself. Sadness shows you what mattered. Anxiety shows you where your body still believes danger is near. Every emotion becomes guidance once you stop fearing it. But then something surprising happens. As you watch yourself more closely, you realize something unsettling. You've never been meeting reality directly. You've been meeting your interpretation of it. Every argument, every heartbreak, every ambition, filtered through meaning. The moment you see that filter, the world begins to feel new. Not because it changed, but because you did. Imagine someone criticizing you. Before, your body heard threat, shame, proof that you weren't enough. Now, with awareness, you pause. You feel the sting, but you also see the story rising. They don't respect me. You breathe. You recognize that sentence isn't truth, it's protection. And suddenly, there's space. A breath between stimulus and self-definition. For the first time, you might actually hear the other person clearly. This is the quiet miracle of awareness. It gives you back choice. You stop reenacting the past and start responding to the present. And the deeper this goes, the more you begin to notice something else. Thoughts come and go, emotions rise and fall. But something in you remains untouched. A still presence behind the movement. You realize you are not the thoughts. You are not the emotions. You are the space in which they appear. This recognition doesn't make you detached. It makes you softer. Because when you know yourself as the space, compassion becomes natural. You stop dividing the world into villains and victims, right and wrong, strong and weak. You start seeing pain everywhere in others and in yourself. And your first response becomes gentleness. That gentleness isn't weakness, it's intelligence. It understands that every behavior is a strategy for safety. Every judgment is fear in disguise. Every outburst is a longing for connection. And yet, this level of awareness can feel lonely at first. You start to notice how much of life is performance, how people hide, compete, protect. You crave realness, depth, truth. This is part of awakening. You outgrow what once kept you comfortable. But even that longing is sacred. Because the more authentic you become with yourself, the more authenticity you invite in others. People feel the presence of someone who no longer flinches from truth. You become a mirror, not by trying, but by being. Still, awareness continues to deepen. You begin to notice your attachments, your need to control, even your desire to be healed. You see how the mind can turn growth into another form of avoidance, trying to rise above what hasn't yet been felt. And you start noticing that too. This noticing never ends, not as a task, but as a relationship. Between you and the present moment, between awareness and everything you once thought it had to escape. And as this unfolds, a quiet question begins to rise. If I am not my thoughts, and not even the watcher of my thoughts, then what remains? That question doesn't want an answer. It wants silence. And in that silence, the final unfolding begins. Part 3, when you stop becoming and start being. At first, this final shift doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like loss. You begin to sense the edges of the self you've spent years building. The one that's been striving, improving, understanding, holding everything together. And slowly, it starts to thin. That can be frightening. Because your identity has been built around becoming, around effort, around fixing yourself. But what if the deepest change was never about adding anything? What if it was about allowing what you are not to fall away? You start to notice something subtle. Even awareness can become an identity. I'm the one who sees clearly now. I'm above this. I don't react anymore. And when you catch that thought, there's often a quiet smile. Because even that is just the mind trying to stay in control. The ego doesn't disappear during awakening. It just changes costumes. This is where the strategy goes deeper. It moves from awareness into surrender, not giving up, not collapsing, but releasing the belief that you have to manage your becoming. A quiet trust begins to form. That life is intelligent enough to move through you without your constant supervision. You start to see that everything you've been chasing, peace, confidence, love, doesn't come from doing more. It appears naturally when you stop resisting what is. This surrender isn't a one-time moment. It's a rhythm. You'll catch yourself clinging to certainty, to image, to effort. And then you'll feel the soft pull to let go again. Each letting go feels like a small death, but it's actually a return. You're learning to trust that even when the story collapses, what holds it does not. there will be moments you forget all of this. Moments where awareness disappears and you're back inside old reactions. That isn't failure. That's the dance. The human experience was never meant to be constant stillness. It was meant to be remembered and forgotten again and again, until even forgetting becomes gentle. At this point, your relationship with emotion changes. Feelings no longer appear as problems to solve or lessons to decode. They're just weather moving through open sky. You stop asking, "Why am I feeling this?" and begin saying, "This is what's here." That simplicity ends lifetimes of inner war. You may notice something unexpected, a quiet joy that has nothing to do with circumstances. Not excitement, not happiness, just ease. The ease of being what you already are. You realize nothing outside you is ever missing. You are only overlooking it while searching for more. Even pain looks different now. You can feel heartbreak and still sense wholeness beneath it. You can feel fear without losing your ground. You begin to understand something deeply. Emotions are waves. You are the ocean. They rise, they fall, they disappear. But what you are remains. As this recognition settles, compassion deepens naturally. You see that everyone around you is fighting invisible battles of perception. The person who interrupts is trying to be heard. The one who withdraws is protecting old tenderness. Even your own defensiveness is love trying to guard itself. You stop living from reaction and start living from understanding. This is why this simple strategy is so powerful. It doesn't just change your inner world, it changes your presence. People feel safer around you, not because you say the right things, but because you no longer need to win, prove, or fix. You offer the rarest gift there is: presence. Presence softens nervous systems. It invites honesty. It reminds others of their own inner space. You start to realize that healing isn't a personal achievement. It's an atmosphere. Something that happens when you stop pretending. In quiet moments, when the day slows enough to feel yourself breathing, you may sense something wordless, as if life itself is moving through you. That isn't imagination. That's what happens when the boundary between you and life begins to dissolve. The observer and the observed are made of the same awareness. The mind calls it merging. The heart calls it home. And still, a gentle question remains. What now? It's a beautiful question, because it means wonder is alive. You realize living consciously doesn't mean withdrawing from the world. It means participating fully without illusion. You work, you love, you create, you grieve. But you don't lose yourself in the storyline. You play, knowing it's a play. You feel deeply, knowing you are more than what you feel. From here, even ordinary moments shimmer. Sunlight on a wall, a distant laugh, the breath before you speak. Nothing is filtered anymore. Awareness touches life directly. And the great irony of all this, the strategy that changes your life forever was never a strategy at all. It was the remembering of your natural state, the ability to notice, to allow, to be. No one can give this to you, and no one can take it away. It was here before your first thought, and it will remain after your last. Every effort, every insight, every struggle was only pointing you back to this. The simple awareness of being aware. Sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet enough to hear your own presence, you may feel your entire journey collapse into a single truth. I was never separate from what I was seeking. And maybe that's what changing your life forever really means. Not building a new one, but finally inhabiting the one you already have. There's no final conclusion here, no destination. Only this gentle invitation to keep noticing, to keep feeling, to keep surrendering to the unfolding miracle of being here at all. Because awareness is not the end of the journey. It is the journey. And you are both the traveler and the path.